us on a Monday afternoon. Hi, everybody. Yours truly, Christopher Russo. Broadcast day, we kick it off. Good to have you aboard. Eddie and the crew as we chat. 888 Mad Dog 6 on the great SiriusXM 82 on this 21st day, is that what it is, of May, the year 2018. Lots to do today. We'll do Marv later on NBA. We'll have fun with that. Marv's got that Houston Golden State series. We'll get to that. We'll get to the horse a little bit later on, too. And we'll get to my wonderful second shot on 18, 166 yards out of the rough. Need to get that ball on the green. Shorehaven Governor's Cup Sunday afternoon. We'll do that with Doug Smith and the fellas, too, on this busy afternoon as we chat after what was just Saturday. I was so stir crazy on Saturday. It was mind-boggling. I had nothing to do. You couldn't take a walk. You couldn't walk the dogs. It was 46 degrees and pouring at noon. There was in the East Coast. There was absolutely nothing you could do. I was so stir crazy. I would have gone to the Bronx Zoo with 20 10-year-olds if you gave me the option on Sunday. I was so bored. It was and eating ice cream, which is a disaster. I was so bored on Saturday, but we obviously had at least the second half of the weekend, which wasn't terrible from a weather perspective. Eddie Erickson's in the house today as we babble away here and get you home on this busy day as far as the world of sports is concerned. All right, I'm going to try something, and let's see if we get some mileage out of it, because this is a weird start to the show, because you don't usually, outside of a specialty Game 7, maybe hockey show, you wouldn't lead with it, but I will today because I got a different take on it, and most of you who listen kind of know what it is anyway. Let me analyze the series first, and I did not see Game 5. Did not see it. That was yesterday afternoon, 3 o'clock. I did not see, 2, whatever time, 3 o'clock. I did not see it. But I saw every shift of every other game in this series, and I saw a lot of Vegas, and I certainly saw a lot of Winnipeg. Remember, I took Winnipeg before the postseason began to win the whole thing at plus 750. So I got snubbed in the conference final, unlike the lucky guy who put $250,000 down on Vegas before the year began to get him to a Stanley Cup final. And what were the odds? 500 to 1. So do the math. $125 million. Is that what it is? That somebody in Vegas is going to have to pay him. That is hard to believe. Wow. Vegas can take your money in a hurry. They don't give a crap. They'll take that cash so fair, and so will bookies. They will take that money, and you will learn with your little gambling thing that has been passed by the Supreme Court, that credit card is going to be charged instantaneously when you lose a bet. When you win, getting paid a little different. And now Vegas is moaning and groaning. Where might come up with $125 million? Find it. Bottom line. Find it for the gentleman. Cash. Write a check. As Father Rob said, the tour guide who stinks, who ruined my trip next year, he got this one right. Write a check. As simple as that. Anyway. I took Winnipeg, so I'm on top of Winnipeg, and I know something about Vegas, and I'll lose interest now in the NHL Cup Final unless I somehow figure out a way to root for somebody. But I'll lose a little interest now these next 5 or 6 days. And remember, they're going to have a long gap now before they get to the Cup Final. I believe the Cup Final has to start on Monday night, the Memorial Day night. I don't know if they have the option to move it to Saturday. Eddie can make a phone call on that. You got to call the NHL offices and ask. The NBA starts on May 31st because ABC does not want the NBA anywhere near the sweeps month, so they started on May 31st. I do not know if the NHL is locked in with NBC that they cannot start before Memorial Day night. I'm not positive about that. But regardless, I did see a lot of Vegas, and I saw plenty of Winnipeg, and I saw a lot of the series. Let me sum up the series first, and I'm going to talk about what I think is a problem for the NHL. The series scenario is that Vegas is a very opportunistic team. They got a hot goalie who's, he's loosey-goosey. He's got nothing to prove. He's won cups. And so that is a big plus for him. He got hot at the right time. They won overtime games right out of the gate against the Kings. They won a lot of low-scoring games. They got a lot of guys, big chips on their shoulder, which is a plus, which I think fueled them in the regular season, where everybody said, the expansion team. And then I think it fueled them in the playoffs, where everybody thought the regular season was a a fluke. So I think this all fueled them, and they are very opportunistic. They're very tight defensively. They got a big goalie, and they got a good transition game, and they are very, very opportunistic. They will take advantage. You make a mistake, they will take advantage. If you look at this Winnipeg series specifically, they scored first basically every time, and as soon as Winnipeg tied games, they would score in 15 seconds. I mean, just go look at the games. I mean, every time I looked up, forget game one. Game one, they gave up 3 goals in the first 12 minutes. They lost. Fair enough. But you look at they were a little rusty. They haven't played in 6 days. You look at all these other games, they scored so quickly to start games, and they scored so quickly as soon as Winnipeg scored to either tie games, and they did it in an opportunistic fashion that it was too much for the Jets to overcome. I mean, think about it. I mean, look at the game on Friday night, a game Winnipeg had to have. Winnipeg scored right out of the gate. They tied the game at 2. No, I'm sorry. They tied the game at 1. And somehow, some way, Huggabuck made a terrible error, and Winnipeg scored about 13 seconds. He dropped the puck. It was a ridiculous goal, and Vegas scored, made it 2-1. Now, Winnipeg tied it at 2-2, and they had great chances to take the lead late third period on Friday night in Game 4, down 2-1. But then they had the big kid from the Blackhawks fan on a slap shot from the right point, Bufflin. He fanned on it. Opportunistic, right down the ice, got a semi-breakaway, and he shoots the puck high over Honeybuck's right shoulder. 3-2 Vegas. They hung on the last 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, it is amazing the opportunistic value that Vegas had throughout the postseason. Now, I didn't see a lot of the San Jose series, but I saw a lot of the Kings series, and I saw a lot of this series. And their ability to capitalize on you making an error, or their ability to steer momentum back in their corner quickly after you garnered it with a goal or after the game begins, was astounding. So that is the first thing I want to say about Vegas. The other thing I want to say about Vegas is what Blake Wheeler said from Winnipeg. He had 2 quotes that I thought was very interesting. Now, Wheeler plays on that same line there with that Shuffle kid. What's his name? Shifley, who is great, who had more goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs in his first 13, 14 games since 2009 in Crosby. I mean, he is a sniper. If there is a definition of one, he is it. He is great. And Wheeler had all his assists. Wheeler said 2 things. First off, on Friday night, he said, 9 times out of 10, we win this game. This is 1 out of the 10 times we didn't. It's a great quote. And then he said yesterday, he said, we ran into a team that it was their time. They're playing awfully well. Sometimes you run into a scenario where it's just the other guy's time. And I think Vegas, for whatever the reason, is in that situation right now. They could have been beaten every game. I've seen them play in the playoffs, and they managed to wiggle out of problems all the time. And I am stunned they won yesterday. I didn't think there was any way they were winning Game 5 in Winnipeg and had the wherewithal to get the job done. They are a resourceful son-of-a-gun team. Winnipeg has to be floored that they beat Nashville in Game 7, and then they went out there and they win Game 1 going away. And I think Winnipeg got a little sense of entitlement after the first game of the conference final, where they won easy against Vegas, and they had just beaten the big bad Predators, and they came out in Game 2, and they were tentative, and they let Vegas establish themselves in the first period of Game 2. They had a 2-0 lead, and really since that point, Winnipeg never got their feet under them again. And that tells you about the sense of urgency that Vegas has, and Winnipeg did not match that, and that cost them here in this series. And I would not write Vegas off at all in the Cup final. Whoever they play, looks like Tampa, but we'll have to wait and see. I would not write them off at all in that scenario. So we give Vegas credit for that. That's a heck of a job. And I'll tell you the other thing I thought about too. The margin of error between winning and losing these NHL games. In the NBA, the margin of error is the team is, Philadelphia was not as good as Boston. All right. Toronto was not as good as the Cavaliers. Utah wasn't as good as Houston. Same thing with New Orleans against Golden State. The margin of error in these playoff games is mind-boggling. If anybody has seen Washington, Tampa, Washington has dominated the last two games. They should have won Game 5, and from the midpoint of should have won Game 4, and from the midpoint of Game 5 on Saturday night, which I happened to see, they destroyed Tampa. They were a far better team. It wasn't even close. Ovechkin was by far the best guy in the ice. Not even close with Ovechkin. Best guy in the ice. They had opportunity after opportunity, and they hit 3 posts. I mean, there's a million things. The goalie makes a big save. They just ran out of time. The margin of error of these games is so slim that, sometimes it's just not to be. And right now, it is to be for Vegas. Now, that's the picture of Vegas in the postseason. The issue I want to talk about with Vegas, and I've alluded to this, and a lot of the fans have not liked it. Now, I'm old school with this, so you can sit there and you can say, it's not the way it works anymore, Chris, with the money these owners spend with teams. To me, I grew up where an expansion team, I grew up with the 62 Mets, okay? They're an expansion team who lost 120 games. There needs a certain process to get to respectability. Now, you need a situation where you got to take small steps to get to a certain way. Now, that's changed in the last 15, 20 years. Carolina and Jacksonville in the NFL to a certain degree. That's because they're in their second year, got to a championship game. It has changed to a certain degree. But I still think for the city to fall in love with their team and for the team to establish roots in that town, I think there needs to be a process that's logical where you make a small step and another small step. And then, in 5 to 8 years when when you've been put together properly, you go out there and you got a chance to be a very, very good team for a long period of time and you've established your roots in that city. For whatever the reason, maybe it's the $500 million that the owner spent. I don't know. For whatever the reason, the NHL did not do that with Vegas. The NHL, I don't know the stipulations on the expansion rules compared to what it used to be, but and I also grew up with the Islanders, who also took some logical steps too. The NHL, who came in 72, they were horrendous, and then they eventually found their footing. The NHL did something different. The NHL this year, and for a variety of reasons. Maybe they were afraid of the market because nobody knew if Vegas was a big market. And we still don't know, by the way. The NHL took a calculated risk that they were going to stock Vegas with what would be considered a representative roster right away. You throw in the idea that Vegas has got McPhee sitting there running the team, who knows what he's doing, and they have a good front office. And he took a chance on a coach from Florida who was fired. And he went out there and he maneuvered and he put together a team that was hungry, some cast-offs, utilized his draft picks, found a goalie, a backstop who was young enough and had some experience in Fleury. And he was able to put together a very, very, very good team immediately. And I guess that's what the NHL wanted. But I think it's a major problem. You're not going to tell me I don't live there. I'm not there every day. Forget the Strip, okay? I'm talking about the people around Vegas. I don't live there, so I don't know. But you are not going to convince me that Vegas, off this run, is a big-time sports town. They had Wayne Newton, for crying out loud, with the stupid noise meter on Friday night. All right, Wayne Newton now he never saw a hockey game before Vegas came to town. I mean, you are not going to convince me that that is a deep-rooted sports professional team. You're just not going to convince me that under any circumstances. You're not convincing me of that. And what they did with Vegas, in my eyes, is a negative. What is Vegas going to do 3 years from now when they have 2 off years in a row and they get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs? Who cares? We won a Stanley Cup first year. Been there, done that. There's a lot of towns who have that feeling, that the passion is not there after that first championship. I can give you a list of them. The Atlanta Braves is a perfect example. They were great there in 90. They had some moments there those first 3-4 years. They got bored stiff. And I got a funny feeling that Vegas, which is not proven to anybody that it is an established sports. I don't want to hear about the selling tickets. The casinos can give those tickets away to the big gamblers who come into town and they want to go to a Vegas game. So I'm talking about the I'm talking about the people who live and breathe and are born, and that's their home. I'm not talking about some high roller who coming in from New York for the weekend who spends $1 billion and to get him out of the casino for 10 minutes, his wife wants him to do something, and they give him show tickets. Oh, by the way, I got some Vegas night tickets to play in Kingston. I go to the game. You can walk there. I'm not talking about that fan. Not talking about that fan. I'm talking about the fan who lives and breathes sports. I don't know how many of them live in Vegas, number one. That's not been proven to me. I don't care about the little picture they show about the fans sitting outside that arena now, T-Mobile Arena, all excited when they win a game, which they made sure they showed us on Friday night. With that, I'm not interested in that. And I think it's very dangerous, the game the NHL pulled here. The NHL got Vegas good early. And the NHL probably would tell you right now, if you cornered them and asked them honestly to give you an answer, that they probably a little worried about this, because where is Vegas going to go next? This team's not going to be a dominant team. This team is not they don't got a lot of superstars on this team. This team, there's not Mike Bossy, Brian Trottier, there's not all these established parts building the team up with young players. No, not young players. These are cast-offs. James Neal played in Nashville. These are cast-offs. Where are the Golden Knights going to be 4 years from now? That's my question. McPhee's a great GM, so maybe they can continue this. But if I was a fan of Vegas, and I lived in Vegas, and I have a professional sports team in League number 4, which the NHL, League 4, and my first year as a fan with a pro sports team, my first year of this experience, I'm in a cup final, and maybe I win. Well, what, my friends, comes next? 20 after the hour, we continue. Mad Dog.